I guess in paragraph 3, there's the general termination provision, which lets any party terminate on 30 days notice. So there really is no obligation on the town's part to do anything because they could always terminate under section 3. And I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that. So all these provisions about if it's a minor repair or major repair and those distinctions really kind of fall by the wayside if they decide to exercise, if either party decides to exercise the 30-day termination. So I just wanted to make sure everybody is aware of that. The other provision in paragraph 4, the as is provision, I know we're there now. We're taking it as is in its current condition, and we are acknowledging that it's in good repair. I just want to make sure we're comfortable with doing that. If we do have any minor issues we think needs to be addressed, I think we ought to address them before we sign the lease, because I don't think we have any real ability to do anything after that. And the other provision in paragraph 4 that I think I just want to be sure of is lessee has no liability for any environmental condition, and I understand why you want to do that, but I would expect that if there's any known environmental condition, you have disclosed it to us before we sign the lease. I mean, if it's something that happens later you don't know about, that's one thing. But if you know of a problem and haven't told us, that I'm concerned about that. And I'm not trying. I spent 40 years doing this stuff, so that's the kind of things I look at. But let me see if I had. And the other thing is, Sharon and Tim, I do think we should, even though this is the same as before, I do think we should have our council take a quick look at it, and if any laws have changed, just so we're aware of, we can actually say it's been reviewed by council before we bring it to the board. That's where I'm.
But I only had one question. It was really for Steve, I guess, relative to the scope and space, and that's appropriate. Meaning, it talks about specific spaces, gymnasium, cafeteria, kitchen, office space, 2 classrooms, and bathrooms within the premises. If that hasn't changed, presumably it was accurate. Is it still going forward accurate and reflective of your needs at this point?
Well, there's the old school psychology office. If you walk into the right of the principal, we have started to use that space as well. And we talked to someone at the town about that and got permission to do that.
That fall under office space, sort of not quite defined here.
We expanded a tiny bit.
Okay.
So that should be, if that's not reflected on the diagram, it should be.
Oh,
And in the square footage.
Did I miss a diagram?
It's at the end.
Oh, I see that. Okay, yeah, I didn't get that. Thank you. So yes, I guess that's really where office space, I guess, gets more clarified. If that's, any updates to that would be, yeah, just to make it as accurate as possible, given the usage may have adapted over time.
Yeah, it also references 11,300 square feet. So if that's different, we should fix that too.
Yep. Next time.
Yeah, Steve, just let me know what space you're using and I'll incorporate that into the revised list.
Will do.
Great. Okay. Thanks. So, all right. So that's sort of check. And we have, I guess, from the perspective of that, we would intend to, I presume we could get some review before our next meeting, Sharon, right? So, I mean, not that we're in a rush, but just to get it off our plates, it would seem next time around we should be in a position to.
Yeah, I'll send it over to the same attorney. I actually have to go dig back and see who that was, who our attorney was, who reviewed it way back when. But I'll send it back over to Shipman.
And Sharon, if you could just highlight with them that if I'm reading that right, that all those provisions about minor and repairs are kind of, I mean, they have some meaning, but they could always be circumvented by just a termination, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and that was a part of a lot of the conversation. We went back and forth a lot, and went back and forth, I think, a lot with Jim through that process too, where because of the nature of the building, because of our situation, and we were looking to either lease or build, or we were tentative in how long we were planning on being in the building. The town was tentative in what their plans were for the building. So all of that was, I think, built into the idea of being able to terminate based on what either the condition of the building, not knowing, if there was a major repair, the town wasn't really going to put a lot of money into repairing the building, and we were aware of that situation. And at the same time, if we had found a permanent home, that we then had the right to terminate the lease as well. So I will remind our legal when I send that over to them about that provision.
Okay.
So can I just ask Ryan, how's the new firehouse coming along?
The new firehouse. Well, I'm happy to, speak a little bit to some of the things the town's thinking about doing here and how it interplays with this, but I wasn't sure when that was the right time.
That's a good segue, actually, yeah, because this is a fair point, because we do want to
Yeah.
open up the discussion a little bit beyond this very specific property that we had spoken up last time. Just, keeping our options open here as a follow-on to that. Also, that maybe it was missed on us first time around, but that property is not serviced by public water at this point, or public sewer either. So just a little bit of a wrinkle there for us, given current requirements would, obviously require sprinkling in the building. But yeah, if you have thoughts, in terms of,
Sure.
I'm all ears.
Yeah, so the property that the Vinton School is on, I had actually meant to look up exact parcel dimensions, and I neglected to do that. Was it 21, 22 acres, something like that? Over 20 acres in any case. And so the town, we have continued our work on a number of different design and architecture fronts, and one of the firms we're working with has been helping us with conceptual design work, preliminary conceptual design work for a new fire station, new substation. Not a large, complex facility, but modern and designed for modern needs, and fully functional for present day firefighting tools, techniques, apparatus, equipment, all that. And the area of town, we operate 2 fire stations based on our current staffing. We have 3, but we've only staffed 2 for the most part. We have a couple circumstances that create surge situations, and we actually have personnel at 3, but we are planning for the future where we have 3 staffed stations, and for a variety of reasons, not the least of which the town is continuing to grow, but also we want to, based on our unique geography, want to have stations at 3 different points in town, just have better response time given our sort of geographic coverage needs. And the station we have now that's unstaffed, Eagleville Fire Station at the intersection of 275 and 32, is basically shaded. We have a lot of stations right now in the northwestern part of town. Central, which is what 307 is, our Spring Hill Fire Station, but then our Four Corners Fire Station and Eagleville Fire Station, they're all relatively closely located together in the northwestern part of town, and that leaves us feeling like we don't have the type of response we would want to have in the southern part of town. And so the 32 corridor is important because 195 is kind of our backbone, but 32, has needs, and we don't want to have slow response time there. And so there's a great appeal and a lot of logistical, logical sense that if we are going to replace the Eagleville Fire Station, because it is a small site, entirely incapable of being renovated to meet our needs, if we're building something new and we want to be on the 32 corridor to start migrating south on the 32 corridor, and we already own the Vinton property. So while there might be an argument to be made, nanoseconds of difference, better response time, something a little north or a little south of there, the fact that we already own the Vinton property, while we haven't decided to do this, makes it a very likely candidate to receive a fire station in the future. And we certainly don't need 20 some odd acres to accommodate that. We need probably more than a large handful of acres to do that, something like north of 5 acres. And as it works out, and frontage on a state road so that when you have lights and sirens, you can just immediately get to where you need to go. And so, given the region's interest or need in a facility to meet its needs for the STAR program, and I'm not sure, what's the right term? I always want to say alternative education, but the program you offer at Reynolds, I'm not sure what your term is for that.
That's a good question because it's not really an alternative program. But it is it's an alternative program to the comprehensive high school.
Okay.
So, for lack
It's
of a better
really-
term,
Yeah, it's an 18 to 22 transition program for
Oh.
public school students.
is
The
that,
Reynolds School,
is
he's
that-
talking
Talking
about
about
his
two
depot
that's
different
program.
Reynolds.
Oh,
Yeah,
excuse me.
Yeah, that's the Depot is Reynolds, right?
Okay.
So,
Okay. So you have
yeah,
your
so-
STAR program, and I guess there's just not a quick and easy term for what you operate at a depot. So
yeah, depot as we call it.
yeah, so the depot program.
Yeah.
It seems that there's interest in the region in having a space to perhaps administer those collectively out of, and so we have excess land behind the portion of the Vinton property that has been developed. You know, the parking and lawn area in front of Vinton, and then the playground area. If that's sort of the footprint of somewhere in there is where we would look potentially to site a fire station, you know, getting closer to the road, easy access to 32. It leaves a lot of land that doesn't really have an awful lot of impediments in terms of, you know, wetlands or those sorts of things, with frontage on, there's a little spur that goes on to Stearns Road. And of course, if we were talking about a large public high school with large buses, that would be a different scenario. But as I understand, the transportation needs or services being provided for STAR and Reynolds, you know, could kind of would be conducive for that, for a road like Stearns Road in a more rural neighborhood sort of setting. And so, yeah, so we've been having conversations about the possibility of a subdivision, you know, kind of cleave off what ends up being more than half the property, using that access off of Stearns as kind of a natural point where you might cleave things, and the region could acquire that property, you know, which is open land from the town, and for, you know, something approaching fair market value. And we've not had it appraised. We had our assessor basically provide like a quick and dirty appraisal for an order of magnitude, and we think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $350,000 would be like the land cost. But again, I'm sure this would all be subject to an appraisal anyway, so that's just kind of putting it in like the ballpark. But the town council, you know, there hasn't been a vote taken. I'm not here to convey that, you know, there'd be a promise of anything, but the council certainly has been brought along, is aware of the conversations I've had with Sharon and others, and because the front of the property is still available to the town, whether it's public safety or some other need we have, the concept of selling the property to the region to meet a public education need, given that the council very much supports public education in general. We're not concerned about, oh, well, what we really need is to subdivide or sell that to a private interest to subdivide it for single family homes, because that's going to solve our housing problem. And we need to build more housing, but that's not going to solve the problem. The region's potential need or want for that property, I think, is proportionately greater than any sort of housing product that might be able to be built back there. And so we're very open to discussion, pursuing this. If there is a mutual desire to really get serious about it, you know, obviously, I would need to pursue with the council their formal authorization to engage in negotiation, and then just the sort of, in broad strokes, the process of transferring the property. Once we had a mutually agreed to price, there would be a public hearing process, and kind of just, you know, checking the procedural boxes by statute. So, but I think this is something where there's, you know, shared interest and support. I don't think right now, and I have the sense that anybody in the council would oppose what we're talking about here. That really has a strongly held view that they want to see that back portion of that property be something other than what you guys might use it for. So
Question, is there any, I mentioned the services, has your consideration of use as an expanded fire station prompted any discussions of extending water or sewer to the site? Has that been part of any of those discussions?
I wouldn't say it's been part of. I mean, we know that Wyndham, certainly on the water side, and I think so is true as well on the sewer side, that there's capacity that we do not have, unfortunately, in the northwestern part of town. Something else we're navigating, but so what that would cost from an infrastructure expansion standpoint, I'm not sure, but I think that there would be service capability. That said, I also know that, and this is somewhat secondhand, but the my understanding is that the firm that the fire department is working with on this is not concerned about water supply or water service needs for it to operate, meet our needs as a fire station with basically a private well and septic.
Okay, so that's not a requirement for what you have.
Not a
planned to stay.
requirement, and while it might be nice to have for other reasons, not a legal requirement, but also I think operationally it doesn't sound like it's a concern, I guess.
Okay. Okay, a little bit of a school, as you imagine, school-wise, just not that
Sure.
it's
Yeah,
not
I mean, obviously,
feasible.
when we built the new school, I mean, the Mansfield Consolidated Elementary School, I mean, that's on private well, and it's we've done it.
Yeah, it's doable, right? Just, okay. Yeah, because the nearest, I think the water comes up to about the cemetery and the sewer just past Route 6, and that's about as close as it gets. So it's still, what is that, a couple miles,
Yeah.
maybe from there. So
Tim, I just want to make a comment. That's good news to be reminded about. The elementary schools is on a septic, its own septic and its own well. So the fact that we won't have public services there is not necessarily a game breaker, but it might be problematic in terms of the overall grant that we would be asking for. It would add to the grant. It would be
yeah,
building.
it's cost,
Yeah.
really. That's all it
It's
is.
an issue of cost, but we haven't even gotten quite far enough to even look at that. But that's
Yeah.
good. That's good. Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. And the only other thing I would bring up is that I would be happy to come to council meeting anytime there is a need for any explanation of what we're up to over here.
No.
And you just have to alert me when that would be an appropriate situation in case there's questions. And I'm sure anybody else would be willing to go too, but I can represent the group at any point. So that's just for you, Ryan and Amanda. They might not want to see me, so it's hard to know.
I think
Steve presented a
Hultgren is
while
still,
back.
I was gonna say Hultgren is still a very fond last name in Mansfield Town Hall, so don't worry about that.
Great. Yeah.
And Steve presented a while back. I think it was when we did the lease the first time, and was very, very warmly welcomed by the council.
Yeah, I'd be happy to go as well and update the council on our progress and our vision.
And I know it's ancillary benefit or whatever, it's not the primary motive to do it, but I mean, we've certainly had conversations, Sharon and I, about if all of this came to be, the idea of, facility like you're looking to cite being right next to a fire station, just in terms of, some of the daily interplay between, access to experiential learning, what's going on at a fire station, so just from a, community value, community benefit, feels good, value added sort of thing. It's nice.
Yeah, that's come up in our discussion too, even aside from that mention. So yeah, for sure. I think there's willingness on both sides.
It's the relationship piece is it really important. I think it just kind of continues. I think what Steve and Deborah before created with that program. It's that the community relationships are really important.
So we have kind of in the middle of some work on the site, just trying to put together sort of a quote unquote business plan, if you will. Get us some sense for what our costs would be overall, reimbursement, again, that sort of actual cost on an amortized basis out for the site and comparing it. You had mentioned previously, just to confirm this is still the case, that the town had interest in using the what you would call the Reynolds building. That's still true?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're open certainly if the region wanted to talk about something involving that property, that building, you know, I mean, we're certainly open to that. There are, I guess, thinking that one possible outcome of this was you guys were going to look to consolidate, for lack of a better word, but co-locate, co-house, you know, both of these education programs under one roof or one campus, that if the writing was on the wall that Region 19 wasn't going to have an active interest or a need for the property on Depot Road, that, you know, there are other, not even just town, but like I guess partner entities that have sort of a standing, you know, request that, hey, if anything becomes available, let us know.
Right.
So it's more like that, like we know, okay, well, they may still have an interest in that. I mean,
Yeah, just to be clear, our intention would be to
Yeah.
house both, right? Just that remains the case.
Mhm.
Any other questions specifically about Vinton? I was going to ask, kind of open it up to any other properties come to mind, but before we move on to that, is there any specific questions about the Vinton opportunity? And I mean, obviously, we'll continue to interrogate that and build the case for it, but yeah, so I was going to open it up to, you know, we kicked around a few things, but I figured while we had you here to ask about, you know, whether it be other property or other sites that may have come to mind since we last spoke.
Nick, were you going to ask or say something? I have a question.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Ren. So I'm just going back to the lease agreement really quick. On number 3 in termination, this is a very specific question, but I'm also new to building. So, the clause of with or without cause upon 30 days of advance notice, 30 days seems very not like a lot of time, and the with and with or without cause. Is there like some background on why is what it is?
I other than I think the point was made accurately earlier that one of the ways, so I think everybody's operating in good faith here. I think the region certainly understood that, you know, we didn't want to enter into an agreement that could have the unintended consequence of sort of compelling us to invest like in capital projects to, you know, basically make a building habitable, that we weren't making any representation in the long term. You know, something could happen, like, you know, there weren't active, you know, major roof problems, but a storm could happen and that's the end of the roof. And we didn't want to be in a situation where we were sort of having to remedy that like the way a typical landlord situation would, right? And so just I guess sort of vague recollection several years removed from it, but I believe our town attorney advised that this was one way of kind of ensuring that, you know, basically if something changed, a condition changed, that we knew we, you know, weren't going to be able to rectify for financial reasons, that we would just kind of give notice at that point of interest to dissolve it, you know. So certainly it's never a situation in our end that we would be just like arbitrarily, yeah, you know, let's just do something else with this building and kind of in 30 days expect, you know, Region 19 to be out on the street. We wouldn't just never do that. It really was just kind of guarding against, not that we would ever expect the region to try to do this to us, but basically make sure that we're leasing the space as is, you know, minor sorts of things, you know, upkeep, operating for operations, but we just want to make sure that we didn't enter into something that kind of gave us what we wanted, the benefit of having a tenant in there that, you know, kind of kept eyes and ears on the space. So if there was an issue, you know, didn't have like vagrants or whatever happening, but also just wanted to guard against the possibility that we would ever be held accountable to dump a lot of money in the building.
Makes sense. Thank you.
And I do have to say that, you know, in being there, there's been minor, you know, repairs and little things that have had to happen. And, you know, Dennis has really worked with the town folks, and, you know, it's been a very good relationship between I think between everybody, just to, in a concerted effort, I think to keep that program happy and well housed, with the idea that, and we came into this knowing and understanding that, those buildings were closed for a reason. And, we were, happy to have a home for the program in the interim, knowing that it was going to take time for us to find a permanent home for Star. And, but no, also understanding that the condition of the building could be variable, depending on weather, depending on, just normal wear and tear. So, and I think we've been able to communicate pretty well over the past few years, just about through our monthly meetings about just how things are going.
Yeah, I think when we first started, it was kind of like one of those, it's living on borrowed time, right? Especially like the roof. I mean, it could experience no real problems for another 5 or 10 years, or tomorrow I could be getting a call so it's just, you just don't know.
Yeah.
Yep, Alan has a question.
I just had a question about the appraisal. I know you said it was a rough estimate, but was that the entire 22 acres, or was that like the 15 acres, subsequent to a firehouse being on the frontage?
Yeah, so I don't remember the exact acreages. I want to say it's something like 13 or something acres. That is if you follow Stearns Road, not that you have to subdivide this way, but if basically you just went straight back, follow that little spur all the way to the northwestern property boundary, you're left with something like 13 acres in the
Sure.
the polygon that remains. And so the 350,000, I believe, is just, and Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's for the subdivided piece that the region would be on. So if it's 13 acres, it's that amount for 13 acres of open land with frontage on Stearns Road.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Looks like that access strip is about 50 feet or so out through there, just roughly from what I could scale from the drawings I was able to find. So potentially adequate for our needs.
Yeah. Sized properly for a driveway. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The neighbors may not be happy, but.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd like to think it wouldn't, be a up in arms situation. I mean,
Yeah, I would hope, right?
they'll probably the freak out will be over the fire station near them more so than, probably smaller school transportation going in and out because I can't remember the STAR program I went, wasn't it like 25 kids or something like that?
All told, it's like 2 times that, maybe,
with the
70.
depot, if it all kind of.
Yeah, there's not, they're about similar size right now.
Okay.
Maybe you see some growth, but
Yeah.
no less than 100 for sure.
Okay.
Students anyway. But yeah, I would just go by there and look like they were like using it as some adjacent lawn, or as kind of it almost looked like that. But anyway, but to my question, given this time's ticking here on our meeting, yeah, in terms of anything else that may have come to mind, whether it be building or property, since we last spoke, I figured I'd do my due diligence and ask while we continue to churn the numbers on a project in general. And the site may not change it drastically, but figured with the various the activity both in the development side and Yukon and whatnot, if anything else has come up.
Nothing that I guess that I'm aware of that I would float out there. Certainly no property that the town owns or controls that we would be, looking to do anything with at this point. And even those that may be have something going for it that would be of relevance or interest, the timeline in which we would know, it's like kind of a domino effect. Like, for instance, I know we had talked at one point about like what's going to happen with the old senior center if and when, as part of this ongoing facilities master planning process we're doing for what we call our main municipal services campus right next to Region 19. If we ultimately elect with town support to bring those senior center services over here, and incorporate them however we end up doing that in new construction. And the old senior center remains. What's going to happen with that? You know, if that was available today, theoretically, that could be something you might want to do something with, because you know, the public water aspect, you know, sewer, all these sorts of things. The size, it's like 9,000 square feet. That may or may not be the right size for something, but we're just not there yet. You know, that's, you know, better part of at least 6 months away from even knowing, are we going to be looking to move away from that? And then it's even longer before those programs and services being operated out of that building would theoretically migrate into another space because you have something new built. So, but other than that, I mean, nothing, I'm just drawing a blank here, but nothing that I can think of that seems to be either location and parcel size, other things that I've heard of that I thought, oh man, I hope Sharon and company really knows about that, because it could be a great fit for what Region 19 is trying to do.
Okay, well, thanks for entertaining the question, you know.
And certainly if it
consider-
happened, if something
Yeah.
comes up, I definitely would share that.
Yeah, please, please. Even if it's not town, if you for
Well,
just
that's what
some
I
other
mean, yeah.
transactions, yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes we'll hear about things, oh, maybe the town's interested and it might not fit a need, but always in the back, honestly, always in the back of my mind, I've thought of like what the region's needs are. So
Or any commercial, things that may fall through or whatever,
Exactly.
development type work there, so. Okay. Anything
say
else
so
we had?
I was
So
just
go-
say somewhat jokingly, but I mean, other than the closest thing where you're talking about land transaction wise, it's come up with like, you know, Yukon asked us recently, like, you know, if Region 19 ever gets serious about wanting to, you know, relocate EO, we'd be all about that land, you know, just because the contiguous, you know, their campus. But that's
Yeah.
that's obviously a whole other thing.
to
I'm
get
giving you
to-
a call.
Once they get that through our population or our voting members, then let us know about that. Yeah, that didn't go well last time.
No.
We could have an intro talk though. We could certainly have a conversation to see what they're thinking.
Yeah, conversations are
If
always
they're going to
good.
offer up some parcel for the main campus, it'd be interesting to hear what they have in mind, at least to consider as a you know, knowing that everything that you all went through before. Certainly the process would have to look very, very different, but you know,
Right. More.
what are they willing to put on the table would be interesting to hear.
Who was your contact there for those matters, Ryan? And is that someone, maybe Sharon, just maybe that's the person to sort of stay in contact with if that.
Yeah, so I don't think it has to be. So the specific individual who's part of a team of people we meet with monthly, kind of,
Mhm.
you know, vice presidents for different things. So Sean Basington's his name. Sean wears a lot of different hats, but I believe the current title, it's like executive director for, it's like real estate at UConn. Took over a role previously occupied by somebody named Robert Corbett. Robert left in the last year. And Sean's been with the university a long time. He's very engaged in town stuff, very involved in the downtown partnership. But he's like a landscape architect by training, and yeah, so he just basically says, you know, because they'd heard through the grapevine, I think, about it's on the agenda too, I think, the HVAC and air quality issues. And so like he was kind of like, so when they did that study and they came up with a huge price tag to remedy that, have you heard anything more like, hey, we should just have a new school somewhere rather than remedy this? And I said, well, that would be a conversation for you guys to have with Region 19. I guess I can't speak to that. So
It's a bear.
Yeah, that's wrestling with that bear. Yeah.
All right.
I have a quick question. On the access road to Vinton, what's the reason that it can't be on the main road, the Stafford Road, and it has to be over on Stearns
yeah,
Road?
so I
'Cause
guess that's a good question.
very narrow, very, very
Yeah,
narrow.
fair point. So I don't think so we don't have a site plan, any sort of layout at this point. We have a conceptual plan for, and it's still subject to change, but basically a conceptual plan for the station we think we need, that basically is without a home. So it's like, it's gonna kind of look like this and just plop it down somewhere and maybe change a little bit depending on the layout of the lot it goes on, but more or less something that could kind of go anywhere. And so all that to say, I don't think, while it might be cleaner and neater not to have to figure out a, shared driveway, I don't think it's impossible. There's a fair amount of land there. And I do think that if that ended up being the thing, like the access off of Stearns Road, either because it's off of Stearns Road and you're worried about neighborhood concerns or something about it was problematic. I mean, I don't want to give up on that because I like the idea of it's just cleaner and neater, that works. But if
Yes.
that was a hurdle, we're certainly not at a stage where I'm saying, well, we've looked at it every way possible and there's just no
Right.
way to accommodate access for the region to the back portion of the property through the front
Mhm.
portion of the property on Stafford Road. It's just obviously, you can imagine without thinking about it too much,
Yeah.
fire trucks, apparatus, what happens when that's happening, when people need to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, the property boundary, if you're looking from 32 at the school currently, is just to the right of the right end of the school. Like, it's not like you can look at there and say, oh, there's a big strip to the right of the school. The boundary is just next to the end of the building. So if you're looking at it from the road, say, so it would need to be either through where the building is now or quite a bit to the left. But yeah, it's a fair point to discuss in looking at this whole thing.
Yeah, especially when, and I don't remember the size of the parcel, and there are other things we're, I think gonna be interested in doing potentially with it, but Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, but the open land directly north of the Vinton property, if you follow Stafford Road up to the very next
Yeah.
parcel, we recently acquired that. And so the town now owns more property there. So again, whether or not that property would be conducive for it or would make any sense, I don't know. But we have then more land to work with. So if that meant something like, well, we're going to use some of that frontage because we're going to shade the fire station a little further north, so it's not kind of directly where the current school is, to accommodate access, that you need through the frontage on Stafford Road. I think there's probably some flexibility here. But just, when you're talking about apparatus responding in emergency situations, large vehicles, just obviously care would need to be taken to lay something out that didn't create, conflict.
So we are running, getting close to end time. I do want to share with you guys about this topic just really quickly. We have confused the Department of Administrative Services with our building plans. They are, the scenario that I described with the combination of both programs has them in a little bit of a conundrum right now. So the way that they described it as, recently as, when was this one? This morning. The scenario that I described has a level of complexity that is not expressly contemplated in the statutes for the grant program, Chapter 173. So I've requested a meeting with them to discuss in more detail, so that we can sit down and have that conversation around the details of what actually falls within their statutes, and perhaps Heather can bring out some big guns in order to get some support in helping us with those details. So I explained to her kind of the parameters of each of the programs, including the ag component of having an ag garage with access to a land lab, for the reason that if square footage has a piece of what they will, square footage per student, if the number of ag students contribute to the number of kids per square foot, that might get us more funding if there's a connection to it. But I'd like to sit down and talk with them about that. So I included all of that in the description of what this building that we're looking to create would include. So we're in process with that. The other question that she was able to ask, or was able to answer, was in regards to our building, which, I mean, as much as we would be willing to talk to UConn she did say that there's no obligation from the perspective of Chapter 173 that requires the district to continue to operate a school building. So we're talking about the main EO campus. However, if the district received grant assistance for an existing school building that ceases to be used for public purposes or is abandoned, sold, leased, or demolished, the district will owe a refund to the state for the unamortized balance of the grant assistance. So we would owe them for the grant,
Right.
for the roof and for the solar.
So it'll go on UConn's bill.
Yeah, well, if they want it.
Kidding.
So those were the two
Okay.
pieces of information that I was looking into.
Yeah.
And I'll follow. I asked Heather today for either a phone meeting with some folks who may have those answers for us, or an in-person meeting. I wouldn't be opposed to going there and sitting down and talking to some folks.
I'd love to join you for that. So let me know.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay. All right, well, I'm assuming we're a minute from our hard stop with probably another committee meeting behind us here. So we should wrap. We really need, I mean, Dennis didn't join us, I don't think, relative to the HVAC and that, where we're wrestling with how to organize those costs. You know, is there a way? Is it, you know, again, better to lump them and do it as a big hit? Do we cut the school in half and rebuild half of it? Do we chip away at these things through operating expenses over time? You know, that's the strategy that we gotta come up with, and I'm not clear on right now.
Tim, is it
Nothing-
helpful for me? Did the paper that I sent you, or the part of their plan that had it chunked into
Yeah.
parts of the project, and I tried to quantify it based on it's squishy numbers. I think we know
Yeah.
it's squishy because it doesn't include the materials, it doesn't include all the pre-work that needs to happen, and we know that some of those pieces are connected to other parts of the project as well. But I'm happy to scan it and send it to the rest of the committee for them to
Yeah.
look at. I just don't know if it's helpful.
What I've been struggling with too is what's connected to what, right? Like this needs to be done in order for that to be done, right? And so it's like there's buckets, and our effort with them was to try and provide a plan, but they didn't succeed, I think, in coming back with something that you can really get your head around easily.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of groups, and I had sliced it and diced it previously in a different way, and so I don't know. I think our strategy, maybe we need a third party, someone to say, okay, I mean, our consultants as engineers should be able to do that, but they're struggling in sort of providing us with, I think, really coherent options that are logistically feasible for us, right?
Yeah.
Is kind of what I'm getting at. So that's sort of a broad strategy discussion we can get into. Yeah, I mean, if you have information that you know, I think would be helpful. One of those you sent me came through, I think it was scanned upside down. I got to figure out how to turn all the pages.
Oh, it's just at the top. It was because it was bent, and if I had put it through the scanner the right way, it would have
Yeah,
gotten
okay.
stuck. So yeah, there's just a little thing up at the top that you can turn it with. But I'm happy to send that along to folks or at least include it for the next meeting so that we can review it, and maybe people can help us make heads or tails of it.
Right, to get some strategy moving forward here. So
Okay.
anything else before we adjourn? Okay,
Okay.
move
Thank
to adjourn. We need a motion.
I'll motion.
Thank you. Nick. Second, someone?
Tony?
Tony, thank you. All right, good discussion. Thanks, Amanda, for Ryan and joining. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
you.
Ryan. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Ryan.
Bye,
Be well.
everyone.